Welcome back, Cowboys Nation. The offseason is officially here, and it's the perfect time to take a deep dive into some of the biggest questions surrounding America's team. And today, we're focusing on one of the most important positions on the field: quarterback. Now, we all know that Dak Prescott is the face of the Cowboys offense, but what happens if he goes down again? Who steps up to take the reins, especially when you look at the state of the backup quarterback position? Sure, Dak Prescott is the starter, and there's no question about that. But when you take a closer look at the roster, there's one glaring hole that has fans, analysts, and even Cowboys front office officials scratching their heads. That hole is the backup quarterback spot. And with the offseason in full swing, the Cowboys have some serious decisions to make. As we all know, Prescott has been dealing with injuries in recent years. In fact, the last time he played a full 16-game season was back in 2019, and that's been a concern for Dallas ever since. Sure, Prescott has shown his resilience time and time again, but injuries, especially to a quarterback, are an unpredictable part of the game. Dak's been hurt a lot. It's not just a fluke here and there, these are major injuries. So, as we look to the future, it's clear that the Cowboys need to seriously address the backup quarterback position. Since 2019, Prescott has dealt with some major setbacks. In 2020, we all remember that horrific compound fracture to his ankle. It was a gut-wrenching moment for the team, the fans, and for Dak himself. That injury cost him the entire season. Then, fast forward to 2022, another injury. This time a fractured thumb that kept him out for 5 games. Even though the Cowboys still managed to make the playoffs that year, it was a reminder that injury can strike at any time. And we can't forget 2024. Dak was forced to miss the final 9 games of the season due to a hamstring injury that was worse than initially thought. That's 3 separate injuries in just the past few seasons. And with Dak turning 32 years old this July, there's no doubt his body is starting to take a little more of a beating than it used to. Now, let's talk about the backup situation. Historically, we've seen Cooper Rush fill in when Dak was sidelined, and to his credit, Rush was solid. He posted a respectable 9-5 record as the Cowboys' backup quarterback. But with him being a free agent, is he the answer for 2025? Well, there are a lot of questions surrounding Rush's future in Dallas. And then, of course, we have Trey Lance. The Cowboys traded for him last year, but Lance was only given a shot in the final game of the 2024 season. That tells us a lot about how the coaching staff views him. Even though Lance has a lot of potential, it seems like the Cowboys aren't fully committed to him as the future of the backup role. Lance is young. He has a cannon for an arm, and his athleticism is undeniable. But after 2 rocky seasons in San Francisco, can he actually step up and be a reliable backup for a team with Super Bowl aspirations? That's a big question mark. And what about Will Grier? Well, Grier is another guy who's stuck in a practice squad role, and he's never really been considered the long-term solution for Dallas. So that leaves us asking, who can fill that void? The Cowboys can't go into 2025 with just Dak and a bunch of unproven players behind him. So, what are the Cowboys' options this offseason? Let's take a look at some of the free agent quarterbacks who could potentially fill the backup role. First, we have some big names out there, guys like Aaron Rodgers and Sam Darnold. Sure, they could both bring a lot of experience to the table. But do they want to come in and settle for a backup role? That's the real question. Rodgers is a future Hall of Famer, but he's not going to settle for sitting on the bench behind Dak Prescott, especially with the amount of money he'll be commanding. And then you've got guys like Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. These two have played for some pretty historic franchises, but their futures are uncertain. Wilson has had a rough stretch in recent years with the Denver Broncos, and Fields has shown flashes of brilliance, but he's also dealt with growing pains in Chicago. Neither of these quarterbacks would come cheap, and neither of them would be interested in a backup role. So, are they really realistic options for the Cowboys? It seems unlikely. However, there are some more affordable veterans who might be willing to embrace a backup role, like Jameis Winston and Joe Flacco. Both of these guys have starting experience and could provide solid leadership behind Dak if needed. The question, though, is whether they'd be willing to accept a backup job for less money than they could get elsewhere. Winston, for example, is a gunslinger who's shown he can win games but has also been inconsistent. Flacco, on the other hand, has Super Bowl experience, but he's 40 years old now. Can he still cut it at the NFL level? If the Cowboys are looking to go younger, there are some interesting options here too. Zach Wilson and Mac Jones are two quarterbacks who've been trying to prove themselves after rocky starts to their careers. Maybe a fresh start in Dallas could help them rediscover their form. Both Wilson and Jones have shown flashes of potential but have struggled with consistency. Dallas could be an ideal environment for one of these young quarterbacks to learn from Dak Prescott, while still getting some spot starts if needed. Other potential backup names include Taylor Heinicke, Marcus Mariota, Drew Lock, and even Jimmy Garoppolo. All of these guys have starting experience and could bring some stability to the backup role. Of course, there's always the draft. The Cowboys could look to add a young QB in April. But let's be honest, this year's draft class is not overflowing with quarterback talent. It's not a great year to find a gem in the later rounds, so the Cowboys would likely have to use a mid-round pick to find a potential backup. And let's not forget, drafting a quarterback comes with its own set of risks. Sure, you might find someone with upside, but that also means you're potentially taking a spot away from addressing other key areas of the team. So, what does all of this mean for the Dallas Cowboys? Well, it's clear they need a reliable backup quarterback for 2025. Whether that's bringing back Cooper Rush, signing a veteran, or taking a chance on a young quarterback, the Cowboys can't afford to go into the season with just Dak Prescott and a prayer. History has shown that injuries can strike at any moment, and the last thing the Cowboys want is to have their season derailed by an injury to Dak and no viable backup in place. Whatever decision the Cowboys make, it's going to be crucial for their playoff hopes. With a talented roster and a franchise quarterback like Dak Prescott, the Cowboys are close to being Super Bowl contenders, but they need to make sure they have a solid backup plan in place. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Who should the Cowboys go after this offseason for backup QB? Do they roll the dice with a rookie, or do they bring in a veteran to hold down the fort? As always, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more Cowboys news, and we'll catch you next time. Stay tuned.